Here, let's continue discuss the empirical evidence on the theories Adam Smith, the father of modern economics, came up with. We especially focused upon the role of saving during the economic development. Okay? How much people save. We said that, according to Smith, could be very important because of the two reasons or two channels. The first one is a higher saving could lead to a higher investment, which eventually lead to a higher income level. Okay, and so in the previous videos, we already check out the empirical evidence about this, including the higher saving rate in Asia and a higher investment, including domestic and foreign investment. Okay, and here in this video, we're going to take a look at the second channel Smith mentioned in his book, The Wealth of Nations. He said that a higher saving could provide more productive resources for R&D, which is research and development, and these eventually leads to more technological innovations. Okay, now once again, the higher saving, we already checked it out, right? Now here we just look at the R&D, research and development in Asian economies. Okay, now this chart shows how much each country around the globe invested in research and development. Okay, and their spending has been expressed in the purchasing power parity. That's why here you see the PPP. Okay, and this is annual spending, and of course how big the circle is represent how much they spend on R&D. Okay, so you find that United States is the largest circle here because annually it invested $476.5 billion in research and development. Okay, being the number one R&D spender. And China is the second one, okay, $370.6 billion spent on R&D. And Japan is the third one, $170.5 billion. Okay, and Germany is the fourth one. So these four economies actually spend more than $100 billion annually upon R&D. Okay, only in these four. Now, if you would like to look at other economies, you would find that, South Korea is ranked number 5 here, about $73.2 billion spent on R&D. Okay, France number 6, India number 7, okay, $48.1 billion spent. Again, you can look at even some small economies on the outside, and figure out how much they actually spent. Okay, when we look at this one, this cross-country comparison, someone may argue that this is unfair because US and China, they have the largest GDP, right, the economic size. So of course if we look at the dollar amount, they should be, or they are expected to be ranked as the top two because, again, they have the bigger pie. So, even they just take out a small slice piece of the pie, then, it could be the biggest one across countries. Okay, so that's why here let's continue look at the share in their GDP, or the share in their economic pie being devoted to research and development, and see if we can reach a different conclusion. All right, this is the estimate published back in 2018. Okay, and that's why here you find that for 2018 it's the actual numbers. Okay, 2019 and 2020 are actually the estimated and forecast numbers. Okay. I believe that because these numbers are actually pretty stable, as you can see, within a short period of time. So you would find that it's pretty easy to predict. Okay, and we would not expect within the short period of time, even in the future, this would experience a substantial adjustment or change. Okay. All right. You find that for each year they have their GDP expressed in PPP. Once again, purchasing power parity. Okay. And for example, in 2018, that you find that the U.S. GDP PPP was approximately $20.5 trillion. Okay. And China was $25.6 trillion. Okay, so once again, as we said before, if you use the PPP, China has already been the largest economy in the world. Okay, and then the second column is the research and development spending. Okay, but this is expressed as the percentage in GDP. In other words, the share. Okay, in its economic pie. The third column here, it's a gross expenditure on research and development. Okay, and it's expressed in PPP. So these are the absolute. These are the absolute level of the R&D spending. Okay, expressed it in U.S. dollars, billions. Okay, and so here, as you can see, in 2018, for example, okay, and United States spent $565.76 billion on R&D, which accounted for 2.84% in its GDP. Okay, China, the second largest R&D spender, actually spent nearly $500 billion that year, okay, which account for nearly 2% of its GDP. Okay, so here, again, no matter which year you look at, as I already mentioned, if you focus on the share, okay, you would find it's actually pretty stable across these 3 years. Okay, so here, in this top 10 group of R&D spenders, you would find 4 Asian economies. They are China, Japan, India, and South Korea. Okay. Now, when we rank them, we also, the ranking is based upon their absolute dollar amount spending. In other words, this column here, okay, GRD. Okay. But again, our purpose of looking at this table is to focus upon the second column, the share in GDP. Okay, as you can see, China and India, the 2 developing Asian economies, their R&D spending for China is nearly 2% of its GDP, and India is 0.85% of its GDP. Okay, both numbers are close or even better than Russia, which is number 8, and Brazil number 10. Okay, and Russia spent 1.52%, and Brazil spent 1.179% of its GDP. Okay, and then when we look at Japan and South Korea, the 2 developed Asian economies, you find that in terms of the share, their numbers are actually higher, or you could say much higher than the other developed economies on the list. Okay, as we said, United States, it's 2.84%. Germany, it's the same number, right? France and the UK are 2.25% and 1.72% respectively, right? But when you look at Japan, it's 3.5%. South Korea, the number is even more impressive. It's 4.32%. This is actually, in terms of the share in GDP devoted to R&D, South Korea is number one, the world's number one. Okay, they are actually the biggest R&D spender, given their size of the economy. Okay, and this number again for 2020, it's 4.35%. Okay, it's still pretty high. Okay, they spend a lot on research and development. Again, one reason this is possible among these Asian economies is because they saved a lot more in the first place. Okay. All right, we have one more chart about the R&D spending, especially the trend, okay, in recent years. And this time, again, we instead of focusing on the individual economies, we look at the regions. Okay, we compare across regions. The first one is East and Southeast and South Asia. The second one is North America. Third one is Europe, and the fourth one is the rest of the world. Okay, and this chart was published again in 2018. Okay, and you find two bars for each area. The dark green or teal bars is their share of the global R&D spending in 2000, and the lighter one is the 2015 share. Okay, now if you take a second, you can pause the video and take a second looking at this the trend or the change between the 2 years. You should be able to find that it's pretty impressive, right? So East, Southeast, and South Asia, their share of the global R&D spending increased a lot from approximately 25% back in 2000 to nearly 40%. Okay, and North America, you find that back in 2000, it used to be 40%. It's the largest, accounts for the largest slice of the global R&D spending. But in 2015, this number already declined to below 30%, okay, approximately 28%. In Europe, it also declined from nearly 28% to approximately 21% of global R&D spending. Okay, for the rest of the world, it increased, but again, it's a pretty small increase, approximately 2 percentage point change between the 2 years. Okay, so here, what's striking for us is again in Asia we find something quite different, okay, from the rest of the world, especially North America and Europe, which are the areas or the regions you can find in the most rich and developed economies. Okay, you find that Asia invested a lot more. Okay, now actually, if you look at the absolute level of R&D spending, you find that North America and Europe also invest more over these years. Okay, however, the growth of their R&D spending is much lower than that of the Asian R&D spending. That's why they account for a smaller and smaller share on the global stage. Okay, and so this is three pieces of empirical evidence showing us that Asia, because of the higher saving, they actually invest a lot more on R&D, and in the long run, you could imagine that they should be able to come up with more technologies, more new ideas. Okay,